to the big questions. I'm Nicky Campbell. Now, yesterday, David Cameron said we need less passive tolerance and much more muscular liberalism to defeat extremism. Doesn't Britain pride itself on being tolerant? Our first big question, should we tolerate the intolerant? Well, this Islamist who burnt poppies on Armistice Day last year says David Cameron is directly attacking the word of God. 50 million quid for Fernando Torres, 38 million for Andy Carroll. Football threw money around this week. In this, the age of austerity, our next big question, has Premier League football lost touch with reality? Alex Brummer of the Daily Mail says this is the economics of the madhouse. Now, some girls now behave very badly, from Lady Amelia Spencer's alleged assault of a man on crutches to the jailing last week of a former public school girl for a homophobic killing. Our last big question has been asked before by academics. Has feminism bred violent women? We're in York, live from the Manor Church of England School with an excellent local audience, and sitting in the extremely comfortable seats for you this morning we have got the Mail on Sunday columnist Peter Hitchens, the philosopher and theologian Conor Cunningham, and the politics professor and founder of the Muslim Women's Network, Baroness Afshar. Right, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, democracy, the rule of law, equal rights, regardless of race, sex or sexuality. David Cameron says this is what defines us as a society. To belong here is to believe these things. So, what happens when those values clash? Should we tolerate the intolerant? He's basically trying to root out bigotry here, Peter Hitchens. We've got plenty of homegrown bigots, though, haven't we?
Oh, we have plenty of homegrown bigots, but I just take exception to a number of things that he says. The idea of muscular liberalism, for instance, it's like rigid jelly or an angry welt. It's just something that doesn't happen. Liberalism is by its nature not muscular. And the other thing is he seems to define Britishness as a form of political correctness. You can't live here unless you sign up to equality and diversity, rather than you can't live here unless you accept that the Christian religion is our prime source of morality and law.
But on the
basis, seems to me to be a much better basis.
On the basis, we can sign up to like equality by race, equality by sexuality, equality by gender, a belief in democracy, or should we tolerate those who don't believe any of those
toleration
things?
and equality are two different things. Toleration, apart from anything else, implies disapproval. I tolerate you. I don't like what you do. I tolerate you because I'm a civilized person who's prepared to share my society with you, even though I don't like you. So it's not the same thing.
Conor, one man's intolerance is another's deeply held belief. We know that from this programme.
Absolutely, but I think the very possibility of being liberal, the very possibility of holding any belief, has to be the thing that grounds it. And that means that there's certain forms of belief which destroy that, which we cannot tolerate.
Like?
Well, fascism, all manner of sort of reductive philosophies.
What is called Islamism, for example?
Well, certain elements, certain strains of certain interpretations, yeah, absolutely.
When you say not tolerate, do you mean make illegal? Prevent them from speaking, ban their organisations?
Yes, absolutely.
So you
but I would say the same about Christians. But I would say the same about Christians. I would say the same about... I think if you...
But freedom of speech, where does that come in?
But you have to... If the thing that you're saying is actually undermining the notion of speech itself, you know, if you're saying, for example, say you're a fascist and you go, well, Jews aren't really people, right? You're undermining an entire group of people and reducing them to the inhuman. It's self-refuting.
Well, Baroness Afshar, let me put something else, if I may, that David Cameron said, which is really interesting in this speech. And he's not the first leading politician to express these sentiments. I mean, he's gone further with this phrase muscular and aggressive, but it could have been a speech by Tony Blair or David Blunkett or John Reid. It's been endorsed by David Blunkett, for example. And he said, when a white person holds objectionable views, racism, for example, we rightly condemn them. But when equally unacceptable views or practices have come from someone who isn't white, we've been too cautious, frankly, even fearful to stand up to them. Do you think there is any validity in that?
I think that this is an argument that I did have with David Blunkett when he started talking about community cohesion. I think, of course, we have to counter injustice wherever we see it. What worries me is the assumption that it's only Muslims who have practices that go against women. It's only...
Bigots come in all shapes and sizes and creeds
exactly.
and credos.
And
This is the thing.
To define a whole people by their faith, the idea that, you know, as an Iranian, I can't celebrate Nowruz, which dates back 2,500 years, just because I'm a Muslim, is absolutely crazy. Just as is the idea that because I'm a Muslim, I'm an extremist. We need to get out of these labels.
Sorry, can I just add to that? And indeed, one of the major fundamentalisms at work in British culture today is atheist fundamentalism, not simply religious fundamentalism, because atheist fundamentalism is even more dangerous to some degree because it actually denies the existence of a person.
Well, you're going to make that illegal, or what? I mean, what are you doing?
I don't want to make it illegal.
Well, let's speak. I mean, let's speak to Abu Raya, who's here from Muslims Against Crusades, formerly Islam for UK, which was banned.
That's not correct, no.
No, what's not correct?
That was formerly Islam for UK.
Were you ever in that?
No.
Okay. Were you in
our organisation is
Al-Muhajirun? Were you in Al-Muhajirun?
Our organisation is called Muslims Against Crusades.
All right. Well, Islam for UK and Al-Muhajirun were both banned. So you know, as a government would have it, so bad they banned them twice, frankly. And
where did the freedom go there?
Yeah, where did the freedom go?
Exactly.
That's your question.
It's oxymoron here.
Where's your freedom to burn poppies? Is that what you're saying?
Islamically, it's allowed for me to burn poppies, or for any number. The issue is more bigger thing. We understand that the war against Islam and Muslims, David Cameron is the two-headed snake in charge of the crusade against Islam and Muslims in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Islam does not allow you to disrespect other people. Absolutely not.
Well, can I just say,
he also disagrees with
Abu,
killing innocent Muslims.
there is a rider here. There is a rider. Most Muslims in this country think you are an utter embarrassment.
Why is that? Because
well,
we call for the Sharia,
yes.
we call for a better way of life, a superior way of life. Then the quagmire we face here today, we have recession, we have colleagues of David Cameron stealing all the money. They have gardeners on second page.
You can have your own way of life.
We have a superior way of life.
Wait a minute. Haleh Afshar, because this is what this speech is all about. Are other Muslims doing enough to condemn people like him?
Of course they are. Of course. I mean, this is the problem. That we do have our own debates, and I am perfectly willing to have a debate with you on Quranic base. I teach Islamic law, so I know what I'm talking about.
I should think that we should debate with people on our level. This is someone obviously clearly not practicing Islam. She says she's a Muslim, but she's obviously very...
I'm sorry, you are not...
She's not covered or anything like that.
Excuse
the basic
me,
fundamentals of Islam...
Islam is not
anyway,
a performance.
going back to the...
Well, you don't believe in democracy, right?
Clearly not. I'm a Muslim.
Right,
Excuse me.
It's at loggerheads with
Excuse me.
Islam.
Right, Baroness, if I may, Conor, you at the beginning you said we have to be wary of people who have views like this, stoning women, stoning homosexuals, stoning adulteresses. What should we do about people like our friend here?
I think we should give them free sponsorship to go to university and study theology.
I think we should listen to them very carefully. I think we should listen to them very carefully. We need to know this is what they think. If we suppress them, if we say you're banned, we won't find out.
But they're on the fringe. But they are what?
Then they will remain on the fringe if we find out what it is that they think. Islam is an enormously powerful political project which would change this country irrevocably if it became. Hang on a second.
Let me say something.
Hang on a second. Let Peter finish.
You think we're on the fringe? We're not on the fringe.
It's an enormously powerful political project which would change this country irrevocably if it became the majority religion. You will keep interrupting you Muslims. Of course they are. Islam is a proselytizing religion which believes the whole world should be Muslim, and they would like this country to be Muslim. If we want to find out, of course you would. If you want to find out what they think, let them speak, and then you can discover you won't like
I will
them.
let you speak, and I will come back to you in 1 second. But I think it's on that point. Don't worry.
We're not on the fringe.
Hold that thought. You believe you have the truth.
Religion in this country. Even your show said that English women who are embracing Islam in their hundreds. So therefore, you can't say we're on the fringe.
Right.
We're over 8 million in this country.
Mohammed from the Muslim Public Affairs Committee. What about this accusation that extremist views, and most people think that Abu's views are right on the edge, really extreme, and many people, Muslims, find what he is saying utterly offensive. What about this accusation that Muslim communities are not doing enough to condemn people like him?
Well, to be honest,
well, he says that because they agree with him.
No, Muslim communities not doing enough. Absolutely not true. To be honest, a classic case in point is some time ago in Luton, when Al-Muhajirun were visiting Luton, a city. All the Muslims came out onto the streets to tell them that they were not welcome on our streets. They don't represent the Muslim view.
They don't represent the Muslim view.
That's
right.
right.
And David Cameron seems to think that's not articulated enough.
I mean, David Cameron is another story altogether. I would accuse David Cameron, in his own words, of passive tolerance. You know, his speech came on a day when the EDL, you know, an extreme...
English Defence League.
Yeah, an extreme far-right threat that is threatening, and it poses a great danger to everybody in this country. You know, they're speaking of...
Are they not a fringe as well? I mean, who poses the greatest...
They certainly are, but...
Well, who poses the greatest danger? Our friend here, Abu, or the EDL, for example, or are they equal?
See, freedom of speech is, you know, a detailed thing. You've got to look at the full thing in detail. I mean, you've got one case where you can hear a person's views. It is another thing to go out, let them to go out onto the streets and cause criminal damage, to actually, you know, incite racial hatred, religious hatred, and fear.
So, Alex Plummer, what do you think? We have to... I mean, if we stopped tolerating the intolerant, we'd lose half our guests on this programme.
I think you're absolutely right. I think a great characteristic of British society down the centuries has been its willingness to accept people for what they are. And so that tolerance is incredibly important. But our friend here says that at the fringe, or he's not at the extreme, he's not at the fringe. But what I worry about, this is an intelligent man, we can tell from the way he articulates what he thinks. However, what I worry about is there are much less intelligent Islamic followers, Muslims in this country, who listen to what he says and are led down a path of extremism which could cause tremendous trouble. And indeed, the victims of the 7/7 bombers, the victims of 9/11, they're the people I fear for, the families of those people who've been killed because of that extreme view.
And members of these groups have expressed support for those terrorists, yeah.
And the idea that the British government should be supporting or providing finance to groups, Islamic groups, which filter down into some of this extreme area is absolutely worrying. And I think David Cameron was absolutely right to say that finance should be cut off.
OK. I think...
One second, Mohammed. You haven't got any money, obviously.
Of course, our organisation does not work for the government and does not require any money.
There's a surprise.
We need the youth to join our side anyway. But what I say to you, you too support the terrorists inside Iraq and Afghanistan. You support the pirate state of Israel.
How do you know I do?
Yeah, because
how do you know who I support?
So why are you against us when we paraded, when the parade came to Luton or in Barking, that the Muslims came out? Why are you against that?
And who defines them as terrorists?
The question that we all should appreciate is that who lays down the boundaries of intolerant and tolerant?
Yes.
Surely, is it man, weak, limited, needy, or is it Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of the heavens and the earth?
But it's certainly not you.
I'm intolerant. I'm intolerant to promiscuity. Yes. I'm intolerant to alcohol.
Homosexuality.
Adultery. The pirates of Israel. All the soldiers that are killing Muslims. I'm intolerant to all of that.
Nakedness, the way people dress, and all that stuff.
Obviously, if you come out in York naked, then obviously I'm intolerant towards that. They need to get their clothes back from their house.
Who gives you the right
He's got
to
every
tell
right.
me,
I'm sorry,
to tell me as a Muslim...
Where did the freedom of speech go there?
No.
Well, give the Baroness a little bit of freedom of speech.
Who gives you the right to tell me whether I am a good Muslim or not? Because of your eyes. You have to do that. You have no right to do that.
It's quite clear by the teaching of the Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we judge from their apparent, and the fundamentals of Islam you need to stick by.
God does not judge by appearances. Come on.
I'm sorry to say, you're not the main issue. The main issue is that the war that's going to take place. We need to address that.
Peter, 1 second. Anthony, writer. How relaxed should we be? Should we exert some muscular liberalism on Abu here? I don't mean to haul him out of the studio or anything like that. But should we? Exactly. But should we be more aggressive about these views, and should we be firmer and stronger proponents of liberalism, or should we just be kind of relaxed about all this, what he's saying, and just let him say it?
Well, I'm a bit confused about why we're sort of focusing on, say, Islam. For example, in Catholicism...
David Cameron did yesterday.
Yeah. But say, why is David Cameron also not looking at the extremists in Catholicism and Judaism? Now, I'm very tolerant towards Judaism. I am Jewish. That's probably why. But I'm also tolerant to, you know, the vast majority of Islamic thinking. I think we should be vigilant against extremism in any religion. Orthodoxy in Catholicism, for example, which sort of is anti-abortion or denies women's rights. Orthodoxy, say the ultra-Zionists, in Israel who deny, say, the rights for Palestinians. I think we should be vigilant towards people like that, but we shouldn't deny their right to speak, and we should be involved in debates like these are, and sort out our arguments through debate.
But when he says, Peter, David Cameron, that he talks about this list of values, the British values, equality by race, sexuality and gender, a belief in democracy, things which signally, and Anthony points it out, there are many sections of society don't buy into. He says, to belong here is to believe in this.
Well,
some people reading some of your columns might
It always
say...
used to make me laugh when George W. Bush would say about the Muslims, they hate our way of life. And I said, yeah, I hate our way of life, too. And in many ways, my views on some things coincide quite closely with yours. In that I disapprove of a lot of the things which you won't tolerate. I disapprove, but I tolerate. I think that in a free society, people should be permitted to do these things. I will argue against them doing them, and I will argue very strongly for a society in which these things are discouraged, but I will not say I will not tolerate them. That's a distinction between me and you. By tolerating you, which I think I should do, one of the things I do is I allow you to say quite openly just how intolerant you are and what a menace your ideas would be to our society if they became prevalent.
But there is a very good example here, if I may. I mean, it's a lively column, Peter. I mean, 2 years ago, you wrote in your column, we show tolerance to gays and we get tyranny in return. Now, Iqbal Sikrani, the former head of the MCB, said, homosexuality is not acceptable, civil partnerships are harmful to society. He got visited by the police for saying that.
Well, people do get visited by the police. The reason for that headline was an instance of a complicated adoption case in Scotland, where the grandparents had actually been told by the authorities that if they espoused a view disapproving of homosexuality, then they would be forbidden to adopt their own grandchild. Now leave aside the issue of what you think about homosexuality. Telling people what to think goes far beyond the limits of a tolerant of free society.
You see what we're getting at here, but if you express views like that by the Cameron criteria, if I may coin a phrase, they don't belong here.
Well,
to believe these things is to belong here.
This is what Saida Varsi was talking about.
Baroness
She
Varsi,
said that there are that Islamophobia is becoming the one acceptable form of prejudice, which is okay. And it's okay because people don't see the debates within Islam, don't see the discussions that are going on. I actually think we should celebrate differences, not tolerate them. Let's recognise it and get on with it.
Godfrey Bloom from UKIP. If I may, Godfrey, you said a couple of years ago, famously, it was a few years back, famously, no self-respecting small businessman with a brain in the right place would ever employ a lady of childbearing age. Right.
Yeah, that's now received wisdom, isn't it? And if you look at the figures...
If a Muslim cleric said that, how would people react to him?
Well, I said that because of the...
And you're not a Muslim cleric.
I said that because of employment legislation being so heavily stacked against the employer when employing young women, which, incidentally, I'm in favour of. If the whole quote...
It's not embracing equality, is it? Do you belong here?
I'm a libertarian, and I believe that anybody should be able to say pretty much anything they like in a free society. And I believe that to be true, and I believe we are a very tolerant society. But we do have fundamental laws, which I think are right. If you're advocating people to go out and hang your next-door neighbour or shoot somebody, that is a fundamentally different thing. But I think this character over here is entitled to his view.
Peter Hitchens, or
no,
which one?
Peter Hitchens, of course, is very entitled to his view. And so is this gentleman here, perfectly entitled to his view. I think everybody in this room is entitled to their view. Where we can't tolerate, where we do have to close down, if he's advocating violence against somebody else in this room...
But neither you nor him, neither of you qualify up to this liberal agenda.
No, well, Cameron is one of the most intolerant individuals.
Cameron
will sack you if you've got a bed and breakfast place of your own and you don't want homosexuals coming to stay. Cameron thinks that's wrong. Cameron is an unbelievably intolerant individual.
But don't you see that you are excluding the large body of potential workers from working. So you're actually cutting their livelihood.
No, you
and
are,
yet you're
Baroness,
liberal.
by ridiculous rules and regulations and employment law. You are the one who I suggest when I looked you up earlier today have never had a real job in your life. You are the one with your ridiculous legislation.
Wait. Could I just challenge something which the Baroness said, which went unchallenged?
Okay, yes.
Use of the word Islamophobia.
Yes.
As if those of us who look at Islam and say we don't actually want this country to be an Islamic country and be governed by Islamic rules, are in some cases, in some way governed by an irrational fear. On the contrary, or a prejudice. On the contrary, it's a post-judice. We've looked at Islam. We don't like its precepts. We don't want them here because we prefer...
We don't want them here?
Prefer a Christian... We don't want the precepts of it. We don't want... No, hang on, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I said we don't want the precepts. The precepts. I'm not going to be misquoted in that fashion.
Fair enough.
We do not want the precepts of Islam. That's absolutely clear. We got that clear now.
We got it clear.
Right. Nothing to do with not wanting Muslims here. Any kind of twisted rubbish like that. I did not say that. I do not think it.
Peter, you've made that clear.
Right, OK. We do not want... No, we do get... People with conservative views do get their views twisted in broadcast arenas, and we do need to be clear when that happens.
Peter has made that absolutely clear.
It's one of our students.
Let him finish, Baroness.
When it happens... What I'm saying here is we do not want the precepts of Islam here because we do not want to live in an Islamic society. That is a rational position. It is not a phobia and can't be classified as some kind of mental illness. It is a perfectly reasonable position to take. And people who want to take part in a civilized discussion should not classify the opinions of their opponents as phobias. They should take them on with reason, fact and logic, especially academics and professionals.
Peter, thank you. Audience, yes.
I'm extremely proud to be part of a very multicultural family, you know, Nigerian brother-in-law, Iranian stepfather who is Muslim, and I think that, you know, he'll celebrate Christmas with us, I can celebrate Iranian New Year, and I love finding out about the different cultures, and we need that as a society to have the influence.
Yes,
just going back a little.
Yeah.
You mentioned the fundamental right to free speech, but where's the free speech of the girls in the Khyber Pass who've been banned from going to school, who've had their schools mortared? Where's their fundamental right to free speech gone?
If you talk about Afghanistan was facing civil war at that time, and
no, this is happening now.
Even now, there's war going on in Iraq and Afghanistan. So therefore, we protect our women. It's okay for you to kill, bomb, gas, or rape even children and women and so on. So that's why the school, even in this country, when the war was taking place, the school was closed. So I don't know what your argument is. But going back to the argument about David Cameron, there is a clash between civilization, between truth and falsehood. So therefore, it's at loggerheads, and David Cameron, Obama are in the head of one of them, and on the other side is Sheikh Osama bin Laden. So therefore, the Muslims will all automatically follow the Muslim leader.
Mohammed.
Well, according to David Cameron's views, I think he considers Osama bin Laden to be a politician anyway. You know, in his words, I'll quote him. He said, Islamic extremism is a form of political ideology. So I ask him, does he consider Osama bin Laden to be a politician, or does he consider Sharia law to be completely unacceptable? I don't think there's a clash of civilizations. I'm Bradford born and bred. Recently, when the EDL came to Bradford in August, the whole of Bradford, all sections of the community, we had several priests, we had several imams, we had people of no faith, we had, you know, people from all sectors coming together to try and figure out a way to deal with that issue, and they dealt with it very successfully.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Thank you. Thank you all. We're going to leave that one. And you can join in that debate by logging on to bbc.co.uk/debatequestions and following the links to our message board. Now, we're also debating live this morning from York. Has Premier League football lost touch with reality? And has feminism bred violent women? So tell us what you think about those topics and send us any general comments you'd like to make about the programme. Well, in this January's transfer window, £225 million changed hands, mainly to move players between Premier League clubs. It's far more than the French, Germans, the Italians or the Spaniards spent. It's no wonder some footballers can afford to spend big money on super injunctions to keep their sexual shenanigans between the three people involved and out of the papers. Has Premier League football lost touch with reality? Alex Brummer, you wrote this article this week very much saying that it has, and in a way that it is debasing our society.
I think it does. I think there's been a coarsening of the society through the money which has come into football. The I mean, we talked about the day when the transfer window closed. There was £124 million of deals on that day. That was also the day, actually, or day after, the Governor of the Bank of England told people in Britain that they were facing the biggest squeeze on their real incomes, that's their incomes after inflation, since the 1920s. So here we have a nation which is facing a terrible squeeze, and this money is pouring into one section of the community. And as you pointed out very clearly, the way that that money is used is not necessarily terribly wise. Many of these young men, probably unsuited to have the sort of riches that they have, spend this money in the most ridiculous ways. They buy Aston Martin cars, pretty harmless, but they also have become sexual predators in a very serious way. And they're protected by their clubs, and they're protected by the British courts.
Wait, Marco Gabbiadini just got a lot of goals in his time for Sunderland. Go on.
That's a massive generalisation to say that across the board that all footballers are sexual predators. I don't know where you get that from.
I didn't say they were all sexual predators.
Well,
I said there is a small,
so
there is a
because
minority.
they've got money, it makes them into sexual predators.
We don't actually know which ones are sexual predators because the laws, the courts don't let us know. What I do know is this. Every day I see from the Daily Mail's legal department a series of legal warnings. I'm head of department at the paper, and I see the legal warnings. I can tell you there are at least 24 of those injunctions out there, and these are players who some of us worship as absolute heroes, including myself as a great football fan.
Because they're having, if someone has an affair, we all have our different views on it.
They're not all affairs, I'm afraid. Some of these relate to. I can't talk about them because we're legally banned from talking about them.
I just about had heart failure there.
They relate to matters which, in a past age,
doesn't matter what.
Marco.
I don't think it matters what it relates to. I think probably the question is that. 20, 30 years ago, players were doing, individuals, I'm not saying all players, certain individuals, I played in football teams, the majority of my teammates were family men who happily married, had children, and didn't, we enjoy a night out like most men across it's cross-section of society.
Absolutely.
But I think this generalisation where you're saying, because they've got money, this is what happens, but it's also driven by the press having this need to have back pages full of these stories.
But also, 15 million quid on one player. I mean, people are struggling to make ends meet.
Absolutely. I mean, I do a weekly phone-in show up in the North East, and it is a concern now, fans, that their hard-earned cash, it's not cheap to go to see a football match. It's not something you can do as an extra. That has got to be your hobby for a lot of families, that they invest, taking loans out to take season tickets. Now, I can understand it. The only thing I would say is that a lot of the transfer figures we've talked about have been driven by individuals, that there's guys at the head of these football clubs who have got money. Chelsea, the biggest figure was Chelsea, £50 million. That's a brand, that's one individual who has a fortune which he's willing to invest in football.
And if he's willing to do it...
Which he's willing to do it, and it filters down.
Alex?
Well, the foreign ownership of British football clubs has brought with it a lot of sins too. And, of course, a number of these foreign owners are non-domiciled in this country. They make no contribution to the broader welfare of the people of this country. So there's a much broader issue about foreign ownership.
That's football lost its reality. It's still the most popular game in the country. Yesterday we had the highest goals tally in the Premier League.
You're falling right into the trap of saying, because it's a popular game and because people love football, which I do as well, I want to get back from this studio to London to see Chelsea play this afternoon. I'm very keen to do that. So I like the game just as much as you do.
But you said they're oblivious. Football's oblivious to the contrast.
Even if there's one role model in this country who is behaving in a bad way and a young person thinks that's the appropriate way to behave, then we should all be ashamed of that because it's costing all the national dialogue.
Do they have to be role models?
It's a really painful conversation, this, because this is a problem with we don't build the conversation on the proper foundation. The facts is that professional footballers in this country contribute over £1 billion.
Does anyone object if Brad Pitt gets that kind of money?
No one moans if Brad Pitt or Ewan McGregor earns £20 million out of a film. The points I would like to make is it's not a question of whether or not footballers lost touch with reality. What reality are we referring to in the first place? What we should be asking is with football and all its resources, is it giving enough back to communities? Are we spending enough on foundations and facilities? I think not. I don't think it is.
But also, Peter, let me bring Peter in. There's the huge emotional attachment that people have to a football club, to their team. It almost takes it out the normal rules.
So they tell me. I am completely baffled by this. I don't love football. I hate professional football. I think it's the most extraordinary exhibition of stupidity, bad manners, cheating, bad acting, accompanied often by a great deal of drunken violence. I don't see what the fuss is about. But that is the curious thing about it. Why is it that in so much of the modern world, the spectacle of 22 men chasing a bladder around a field has become the focus of a cult? You go to Burma, and people come up to you in the street and say, Manchester United, as if it mattered to you, and I have to disappoint you.
That's the global power of it.
It's an absolute bafflement, unless there is some explanation of this beyond the rational. I think it's a sort of pagan cult of heroism and catharsis. Apparently, some of its rituals quite resemble those of classical paganism. It's very, very strange. It's certainly not sane. When you watch all those people in those stadiums who've paid £1,200 a year for a season ticket to watch this rubbish, in ecstasies over these non-events, what is going on? I have to say, it requires some investigation.
We've got a bit of support for that from a
That's
gentleman
where all
over
the
there.
money's coming from. It's a cult.
Conor?
The thing is, both these gentlemen are absolutely correct in one sense. That, yes, sure, it's lost touch with reality. Torres himself said he'd never kissed a badge on his shirt. So there's no loyalty. There's no organic sense of
They're mercenaries,
identity.
aren't they?
They're mercenaries.
Why shouldn't they be?
Right. But also, you're not buying for 50 million. You're not buying a person. You're buying a brand. You're buying something to generate income, blah, blah, blah. Now, the notion of chasing around a ball, a bladder, as you say, and it's like, what meaning could that possibly have? It's almost like, well, why take a piece of, a box of wood and put some gut across it and make a symphony? You know, why a concerto? Human activities are always materially based. It's whether they can reach the sublime, and football, in its best moments, can be beautiful and sublime. Now, no, it can be. It is. Petty's right. It doesn't. Petty's right.
Does it matter why? The fact is that it reaches billions of people around the world football. So
do you feel sorry for some of it? Can I just ask you, Martin, to be honest, do you feel an element of sympathy for a young lad who's thrust into the limelight and given £180,000 a week?
Well, my son has just started at Hull City as a young professional.
Not quite yet.
He's not quite on. He's on £115 a week at the moment.
Yeah, so what about those guys like Rooney and having to deal with?
This is a big question. I think it's what most people would say. Is if someone offered, if someone offered you a pay rise next week, Nicky, you wouldn't turn it down.
In the current climate, I'd have to.
But I think most people agree we're getting to the levels that are causing a little bit of concern with most supporters. Most people. I mean, I played football for 20 years, and it worries me. I think the game is beginning to lose a little bit of its. It's the warm feeling that it gives in communities. I around football clubs a lot. Places like the Sunderland Foundation works with 30,000 kids a year. That's good work being done on behalf of the football club, promoted by the football club within the football club.
Anthony, the other thing is, knowing a few Chelsea fans and Liverpool fans, they were on tenterhooks and they were so excited about the transfer window with all that money exchanging hands. To them, it was all fantastic, and they were on Twitter and they were on Facebook, and they couldn't stop talking about it. The joy and the excitement that it brings, is it worth the price?
Absolutely, and I'm afraid that Peter is the lunatic fringe when it comes to football.
He's the al-Muhajirun of this.
Exactly. I mean, should we have him in our country? Should we have him in our country?
Sorry, Anthony.
Should we have Peter in our country because he doesn't respect the national game? I mean, the point is, Nicky, whether Peter likes it or not, the fans, the great majority, say you go to Leeds. I've written a book about Leeds, and it's as much as part of the architecture, the music, the football in Leeds and the economy in Leeds. They're all intertwined, whether you like it or not.
And the emotional attachment.
And the fans are the one constant in football. Owners, Torres, Carroll, they come and go.
How do you feel when Leeds lose?
Same.
How do you feel on a
Absolutely devastated. Absolutely
devastated?
Yes, because you walk through Leeds city centre and there is a very low feeling. Now, you could say that's getting it out of proportion. that, I'm afraid, is the grip that football has on ordinary people in this
What
country.
difference does it make to you when they lose? When the English football team loses, people weep in the streets and yet when this country has its sovereignty taken away by the European Union, nobody cares. What is wrong with you all? You care about nothing and you don't care about important things.
You're talking about national identity. You're talking about where is the national identity in England.
I'm talking about how you live.
One of the ways you express your national identity is through support for your local community and your national team. And whether you're Muslim or Jewish or Catholic, a lot of those support the England football team. You should be championing the England football team.
I'm talking about substantial things, human liberty and the ability to control your own life, as opposed to an ephemeral football game.
Okay, I think we're losing sight of the question.
Oh, good.
The question is not... I'm a teacher! The question is not about football, but what happens to that money. And when that money enables you to bypass the laws of the land, then I have very serious problems. Exactly.
But can I just put something to you? I mean, the Rat Pack, Errol Flynn, John F. Kennedy, they behaved in exactly the same way that some of these footballers are behaving. The only difference being, these days, we have a thirst, a lust, to find out about it.
Actually, it's more than that. These days, we have the possibility of finding out. No amount of injunction prevents the information from going on Twitter, going on Facebook, and what that does is actually disempower the media. So the media, who are the main channel of communication, are silenced. The information goes around, and the rumour-mongering, I mean, if the Daily Mail writes something I don't like, I can take them on. It's in print, we can look at it, we can face it. But...
It's very difficult, Sir Alex.
Yeah, it might be difficult, but you don't know me.
I think it's easy to write as well, the bad stories.
Conor. Two quick points. I mean, the fact that we're obsessed by what happens in the bedroom with footballers is a reflection of us. How boring are we? I mean, we're really, really boring. Secondly, if we condemn footballers for being bad role models, shame on us. Why are there only role models? Why do we want footballers to be our role models? We're so vacuous, we're so empty, that we need a footballer like Wayne Rooney to be a role model.
But you said at its best, it is like a symphony, it is balletic.
But what was Mozart, Beethoven? I mean,
that's some front line.
They were a bit dodgy too in their own way. I mean,
Wagner.
Wagner especially.
I'm not talking about the X Factor contestant Wagner. I'm talking
that is. But Wagner, absolutely dodgy in many ways. But we don't condemn him for that. Was Shakespeare a bit naughty?
I think you're taking it...
We don't know. Marco Gavidini.
On a philosophical level, you wouldn't see Wayne Rooney as a role model, but to kids on the street at a lower level, at different levels of society... They are. No, there are lots of good role models. I mean, that's probably one thing I'd chuck back here, is why do you focus on all the good work that footballers do?
Mark, just two or 3 points. Firstly, the point was made that football is rooted in community. It's not rooted in community anymore.
It absolutely is.
The internationalisation of money...
There are global brands.
Television rights and so on
Blackburn Rovers
has ended all...
It is in their community.
One or two small communities. It's totally gone. I mean, I was born in Brighton, and the team there is now owned by an American poker player, for instance. So
it doesn't make any difference.
Wait a minute. The sense of community has gone. Secondly, why does it matter? With these big salaries and the large money that footballers now get comes responsibilities as well. And the responsibilities is not to be on the field and engage in thuggery. And you watch every game and there is routine thuggery, there is abuse of the referee, abuse of language, Cesc Fabregas in the tunnel last week.
Not true,
can I just...
You referred to
and the way that works is that the person behind me in my seat starts chanting racist, homophobic, and all sorts of other statements because of the field on the field.
That's a reflection of our society. It's a reflection of Britain. And arguably on the pitch there's much less thuggery than there ever was.
No, there's a lot more thuggery, and if you compare it to what goes on in rugby, where the referee is the Lord and everyone listens. It's
Ryan Knight, and then the audience. Ryan.
Yeah, we're missing a really good platform and a really good opportunity to talk about what the actual question is here. Of course there are ills in football, image right payments, Wayne Rooney paying 2% on some of his taxes, you said, but don't be naive. Football's aware of this. The big bad Premier League we should be celebrating the Premier League. It's a fantastic organisation that brings a huge amount of revenue, inward investment into this community. How it's spent...
And excitement.
And joy. The owners of the Premier League
and pleasure.
Pay no tax in this country.
Which the Premier League and HMRC are currently in negotiations to fix.
We've seen how the HMRC deals with
Lady back there,
tax
you had your hand up a few minutes ago. Good morning.
If football is such an integral part of the community, if everybody enjoys it, if it's like the heart of our nation, where's the justice when there's starving children or people who are homeless? Why are these players getting paid £50 million to transfer from one club to another when there's people who can't afford to eat? It's not fair in the slightest.
No,
Peaches, you're here for our next discussion. You very much agree with that point.
Yeah.
Why?
Because there are lots of issues around the world, and as far as I'm concerned, if money, which is an illusion as far as I'm concerned, because we don't own it, yes, at the end of the day, there are starving countries, we see adverts all the time on the TV. Why can't we give that money to places that need it?
It's not football is not there to do the government's job.
Can I stop you 1 minute? Can I stop you 1 minute? At the end of the day, the way I see it is this. People who have got the money, who are stopping certain press stories go out in the press, that, as far as I'm concerned, how can you have money and stop certain, like, have the power to stop things that from going out in the press? How can you do that?
The reason they can do it is because they are playing with the rope that they've been given. If you don't like it, then let's stop the rope.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's stop it.
I'm interested in something. Something's occurred to me, which is that, you know, the Taliban, they banned games and sports, didn't they? And kite flying and everything else. They banned it all. Howard, in your vision of Sharia, would there be football?
No, they're clearly not, because this is half-naked men running around, like the man said. 2 points here.
Well, half-naked men running around. Do you find that tempting?
Let me say that. I'm a man, I like women. Let me tell you something, 2 points. One, if I could say, one is paganism, the gentleman said, and is like you worship, you said. So, therefore, is against God. Any form, any worship or anything like that, that's misdirected. Not
If you don't mind, when I was talking beforehand, you said, how would... and I said, well, what... You said there would be better use for the stadiums, and you said, for example, showing punishments.
Well, that's one of the ways it could be. We could also break it down. Let me finish. If we can break it down, we can make it public libraries, public baths. We can make.
Can I ask him one question? Just one question.
Let me finish my answer.
Yeah, go on, my lovely.
So therefore, if it's only a place where a lot of people, mass gathering can take place. The money is exploitation in this country regarding football, and people, not in other countries, in this country people can't meet ends meet. There's recession taking place, there's credit crunch taking place. How is it that these
just this one question for you? Just this one question for you, yeah?
You've been so insistent.
Thank you very much, Nikki. There are a few things that you said that I actually agree with. A few things, yeah? Just a few things.
It wasn't about having stadiums for punishments, was it?
No. But what it is this. I want to know, like, as far as I'm concerned, religion brings war. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned.
Islam is a way of life.
Hold on. Islam might be a way of life, and I agree with that. I've got a lot of Muslim friends. However, what I do not agree with, and what I've got a problem with, is why a man who is about Islam being a way of life, why are you so angry? Why are you so angry?
It was another debate, and it was an interesting vision for football anyway, but one particular vision. Alex, thank you very much, and thanks for your thoughts on it. Tell us what you think about that debate. Log on to bbc.co.uk/thebigquestions, follow the link to our message board, and send us your thoughts about our last big question this morning. Has feminism bred violent women? And it's the way I tell them. And if you would like to be in the audience at a future show, you can email audience@menton.tv. Now, we're in Southampton next week, Glasgow on the 20th of February, and Birmingham the week after that. Well, the report this week by Brooke Kinsella, the actress whose brother was knifed to death 2 years ago, called for more action to tackle girl gangs. Crimes of violence by girls have risen by over 50% in recent years. Has feminism bred violent women? Conor, interesting. This has been it wasn't an academic debate, this, and an academic question. It has been much talked about since the 60s and 70s. But you say, if I'm right in saying that, feminism has made women, in a sense, like men, yeah?
No, I think feminism is a brilliant thing and a much-needed thing. But the feminism we've had on show quite often has simply been naked emancipation. It's been simply be anything you want. And then the only thing left to do is copy men.
So has it denuded women of their kind of female identity?
Well, name me the female role models.
I'm one.
You're my teachers. You're my teachers. We need more of you. But the point is, I mean, if you think about the 60s, you think about contraception, you think of the pill. That was the ultimate fantasy for me, not for women. I mean, it's non-consequential sex. And so, you know, no real pregnancy anymore. Fantastic. This is a male fantasy, not a female fantasy. And the only... And if you think about the... If you think about the...
Is that you, Marco? Marco suggests you should become a footballer.
Yeah. What the Baroness thinks is so funny about this is absolutely true. It's a perfectly reasonable statement. It was a revolution in behaviour.
Of course it was, but it was a revolution.
Whatever it is, it's not funny.
It's a revolution
what is it to be a woman?
for women, not about men.
What is it to be a woman?
The fact that you get control over your body and you are allowed to have some fun makes the men feel free. Well, that's wonderful.
If you look outside,
but the whole point is...
The nightclub on Saturday night in Manchester, Liverpool, back to football, and all those ladies queuing outside the nightclub, desperate just to get with a footballer, celebrity, money. There's no womanness left. I mean, I'm all for feminism, but let me know what it is to be a woman, not simply...
What is it to be a woman? It sounds like a 50s notion. What do you think, Peter? I mean,
No, I don't think
How do you feel, Peter, when you see a woman who's had too much to drink, for example?
Well, I feel badly when I see anyone who's had too much to drink, but I think it is worse. And I think women feel this way as well. Most of them do when they see women who are drunk, because it just somehow is. Don't ask me to explain it. Maybe it's the corruption of the best is the worst of all. But it just happens to strike me that way, and I think it's most... down the centuries, poets and everybody else have written about how distressing it is to see women in states
but look,
wait a minute, you interrupt me all the time. Just give me one complete sentence.
Let's create a little island for Peter to make his point. And I know you're desperate to come in.
Without being interrupted. Feminism is a wonderful project. The emancipation of women from stupid restrictions, preventing them from going to university, stopping them from voting, stopping them from holding property, all that. Who can disapprove? This is not about feminism. This is the mad project which says that women are the same as men. And everybody in this room knows perfectly well that is not so. And they should not attempt to treat them the same.
No, I must bring the Baroness in. If I don't bring her, I think she's going to explode. Are we confusing, is Peter right in a sense, we're confusing equal to with the same as?
It seems to me that, giving the men in this room the right to define feminism for us is problematic. Of course, it's your right, but I won't respect that one. It seems feminism is not about us being men. Feminism is about us being equal but different, and feminism...
What would the difference be?
And feminism is about celebrating differences.
Absolutely.
That is to say, some of us like to work the man hour and make the man wages. Many of us would like to work the women hour, but I would like to be paid wages for housework, for childbearing. The day you pay me for what I do, I might become the kind of woman that you like to... Fine, cooking is fun.
What about violent women? Why are there so many women? What's going on there? Especially Peaches. Well, let me just explain a little bit. You had a starring role at the end of the last discussion, but you run this charity, Reality Bites, and it does outreach work in schools.
Reality Bites UK.
Reality Bites UK. Right. You're a former gang member, but you kind of rebelled against your imposed role as a girl in your family.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Well, for me, I grew up in a West Indian household. And it was very much like my mum would come in from work and she'd go, the dishes, the cleaning. And my brother was almost like ignored. Yeah. I didn't understand that. In fact, I rebelled against it to the point of where I would beat up my brother. Yeah. Now, you laugh, but should it be something to be laughed at? And yet again, no, I agree that a man and a woman should know how to keep the home, not just a woman. Go on, Abu.
Yeah, in Islam...
Oh, go. She's brought in Abu, I can't do anything else.
In Islam, men and women, they have distinct responsibilities and gender. They do not clash. And therefore, that's why we don't have this problem of women beating up men and so on.
But do you pay your wife? Do you pay your wife her wages? Do you pay your documents that she's entitled?
Listen, rather than go back to the 7th century, I'd like to just talk about carry on.
No, all I'm going to say to you is, I understand. I'm not West Indians, Africans, bloody.
What did you feel you have to be like then?
I personally felt like that was a violation. Yeah, like how could I felt. Remember, that was when I was young.
If you embrace Islam, you get
one moment, because I've actually looked into Islam. Okay. Yeah, I've looked into many religions.
Well, it's not another discussion about Islam.
No, Nicky. What I'm saying is,
do you want to take over? I mean,
Peach's show. Log on. Anyway, what I'm saying is, But what I'm saying is that in the home as a child, I didn't understand, and I was totally against it, yeah, because as far as I was concerned, my brother could also pick up a broom. Because I rebelled against that, in my later on years, I went out on the roads, and I said, I'm not going to be a weak-minded woman. I'm not going to be somebody who's going to turn around and have a boy turn around and tell me how to go on. And I ended up becoming a tomboy, so to speak. And I said, you know what, I'll challenge any boy, even you, Abu. You understand? I'm just saying, I would challenge.
To fight?
I was challenged to fight.
Yeah,
and that's because I was so angry.
Why are you so angry?
Why was I so angry?
Another great idea, Abu Meets. There's another great TV concept I've just come up with.
You have to understand, that was past. That was past. I've grown up into a woman now. And I appreciate being a woman now.
Under this system, you'll never get your rights, because the women have been fighting for years.
Anna, do you want to come in here?
You'll never get your rights.
Why is it happening? Why is it an illusion? Is something? And Julie, I know you've got a view on this. Is it an illusion because it's being more reported, or are more women getting into trouble for crimes of violence now than ever before? And if it is happening, why?
Well, I think there is an increase in the amount of women that are being reported, but I don't actually think there's an increase in the amount of women that are committing crime. I used to be my brother's lookout when I was little, knowing as a young girl I would get a slap on the wrist where he's getting more trouble. So what it is we're learning more from the media and the stuff that we're seeing. We're learning a tacit acceptance towards violence, and then it's being recognised. So I don't think there is an increase in the actual level. The woman who bullied me at school was a girl. It wasn't a man. I was more terrified of a fellow girl than a man at school. So I think we've always been violent, or we've always had the same kind of tendency. People are violent for a number of reasons.
A quarter of all violent assaults, I think it is, are now by women.
Is that self-defence?
Gilly, what's that?
We have to be extremely careful. You mentioned earlier that this debate had come up in the 1960s, 1970s. That's not actually true. Certainly in 1876, a writer about crime in England suggested that every step a woman takes towards her emancipation is a step towards the precipice at the bottom of which lies prison. I suspect similar views were voiced quite a lot earlier than that, but we have to be extremely sceptical about this headline statistic you put up. As we've heard, actually, increases or changes in criminal statistics are generally as much, if not more, about the way we deal with, the way we perceive, and the way we respond to and police certain types of behaviour. And there's a very good case that violence by women has been responded to extremely differently.
And also it's the way that it's reported, and maybe the disproportionate concentration if it's a woman who does a bad thing from a man who does it. I mean, there were a couple of cases recently where the Ruby Thomas, who killed that poor man, Ian Bainham, in the homophobic attack. She was a private schoolgirl, and that got a lot of headlines.
I think one of the reasons that in a sense, it's because these kind of incidents are so rare that we get so excited about them, and we need to remember that they are actually extremely rare incidents. The statistics that we heard earlier they don't stand up to rigorous analysis, actually. If you look at the most recent statistics, violent crime by young women has plummeted in the last year or two. I don't think anything has been going on socially to have precipitated that decrease. It's more about changes in policing.
But it's doubled over the last decade. Is there something else going on here? The earlier sexualisation
The taboo against drunkenness, both among men and among women, has almost completely collapsed. And if you want to see the root of so much of the violence and unpleasantness in modern society, it comes from that. But there was a very strong taboo in most of this country for most of the last century against drunkenness, particularly among women. And that's gone. And I think that you can't really have this discussion without mentioning it.
Peaches.
From my own findings, because as I said, I run a few girl programmes in and around the UK, And in my own findings, I found a lot of reasons, whether it be rebelling against, you know, the inequalities, whether it be alcohol, which is alcohol and drug misuse is much more violent women up north than in London, to be honest. And also things like PMT gets neglected. There are a lot of, no, and I'm being very serious, because a lot of young ladies who I've worked with, yeah, are not actually aware of their menstrual cycle. 2 weeks before their menstrual cycle, most of these young girls are extremely violent. However, and they don't know this, but when we monitor it, and I'm literally any young lady I work with, I do a monitor.
A lady here wants to join.
I just want to say,
yes, my
you don't have to say that to me. I might not have a leg to stand on, but women in the north of England are becoming much more chav-like.
Much more?
Chav-like. Absolutely. Because, I mean, I've spent...
Well, Frankie Howard used to say commoner's muck.
Well, I agree with that. I mean,
I
live in York now, but I used to live in London. And I notice a difference.
Well, I mean, I think
I do notice a difference.
I mean, I think that's just the difference between the rich and the poor getting wider. You know, the gap there.
But do you know what the fundamental difference? It's education.
Yeah.
Well, the debate was about does feminism breed violence? If we look at the kind of gains of feminism, the women who have gained educationally and in terms of employment are professional women. These aren't the same women that we find in the criminal justice system. If you look at the women in our courts and in our prisons, they are very disadvantaged, come from poor backgrounds, working class predominantly. Black women are overrepresented. They have histories of abuse and violent victimisation. They're not women leaving the boardroom and attacking people on the way home.
No, but is there an attitude that goes right up to the boardroom, do you think? Do you think there's a sort of new vibe, a new feeling that goes up to the boardroom and makes more violent people throughout society?
Well,
Don't ask Abu a question, just answer that one.
I'm not going to ask Abu nothing. For me personally, because I can only talk about me and my findings, so I need to make that very, very clear. And as far as I'm concerned, because I'm an ex-offender, I am a former gang member, so the media like to say, yeah, but the thing about
Were you in a gang?
I was around a lot of people. We never had no name, we never had no colours, we was just a lot of people. However, now in society, we have this word called gang, which has come out.
How did you get sucked into it?
Pardon?
How did you get sucked into this gang?
How did I get, you mean sucked into my lifestyle?
With all those people?
Well, it goes like, it goes a little something like this, but I'll give you the edited version. Yeah, my life, I just had, I came from a background which I saw a lot with my eyes. I'm not going to talk about it so much. If you want to know a little bit more, go to Peckham Finishing School for Girls on YouTube, okay? BBC 3. But however, my thing is this, is that I lived a lifestyle which I was unbalanced and I was confused. You know, we talk about this word freedom, but is anybody actually free in this world?
Is anybody, Baroness, I know you want to...
Can I just say that we really have to think about, first, these reports being reported, and also who judges the judges. The problem that there's so many more proportionately women in prison is that men, who are usually judges, judge women who break the law very harshly. And the difficulty is, once you've been labelled, then there is no way back. So that once you've been known as a criminal, unless you are a fantastic activist, and we have examples here, but otherwise you're labelled as a criminal.
What are
the choices? Cheryl Cole wasn't, she got into trouble, forget the racism, but the actual act of violence. Yes. She was in Girls Aloud. She is now a role model on the X Factor